We'll be right back. We'll be right back. We'll be right back. It's showtime.
It's the pre-party with J. Cal.
We are professional wrestling.
I'm building an alliance.
You are tuned into
the absolute top of the mountain, the ultimate professional wrestling.
Alliance-wrestling.com.
Welcome to the pre-party. That's right, this is the pre-party with J. Cal. I'm J. Cal, and this is a presentation of Alliance-wrestling.com, your number one source for news and information for the National Wrestling Alliance and the United Wrestling Network. And before I go any further, I have to say, man, I got a great posse. I got a great crew. I've got some good guys on my team. Guys like Lamb, guys like NWA Gold, guys like DKM and Jaden. Man, we have a great team going on here. The former World Junior Heavyweight Champion Kevin Frazier. We've got a really cool group here. And week in and week out, we produce this podcast, this live stream every Tuesdays at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 o'clock Pacific. And I'm never disappointed by the amount of love and positivity that you guys bring to this page. Guys like Terry, guys like Ryan Romano, Matt, I see you here. You're going to be in and out. That's awesome. Again, I greatly appreciate you guys being a part of the show. Watch when you can. Wrestling with MMA's here. Again, so happy that you guys are all part of this community, this team. We couldn't do it without you. I couldn't do it without you. So I want to say thank you for being here, and I genuinely appreciate it. Today's podcast is not sponsored by Bang, but I just thought it was really cool that the green can just completely disappears behind the green screen. I'm easily amused. What can I say? The National Wrestling Alliance? The National Wrestling Alliance is expanding its roster. You know, one of the most exciting times about baseball, and I know this is a wrestling podcast, so don't get it twisted, but in baseball, towards the end of the year, they expand the roster. They bring up all the guys from the minor leagues who show potential, and they bring them up to help the team finish out the season, allow guys to rest who are hurt or old or just need some time off. And this is the time of year or that is the time of year that's really exciting in baseball. But with the NWA coming back, we're going to start getting more and more of these announcements of these new members joining the roster, returning faces, new faces, and it's incredible. This is so exciting. Again, we're about 2 weeks away from March 21st. Well, I guess we're a little bit more than 2 weeks away, but we're almost 2 weeks away from March 21st, which definitely is the kickoff of the NWA with Back in Black. No, sorry, Back for the Attack. And the NWA's back, baby. And I think that's really, really, I mean, gosh, we've been talking about it for over a year now. Think about it. The guys over at This is the NWA podcast, or This is Pro Wrestling podcast, you've got me and a few others have been keeping the conversation at hand about the National Wrestling Alliance. And it's been over a year since the company has produced a live wrestling event. That's dedication, I think, for the fans. But more so than that, I think that's something to be said about the fandom. Because, look, I'll be honest, guys, if you weren't watching these shows, I probably wouldn't be putting them on. Same thing for This is the Wrestling podcast. If nobody was watching their content, I'm pretty sure they would stop creating it. It's the fact that this NWA fan base is still so strong and so supportive and so positive when there has been very little to talk about. And now we finally have got this stuff to talk about. This is going to be fun, guys. If you're new to the show and you weren't with us last year, get ready. This is going to be a lot of fun. We're going to talk about as the show starts, and that show being NWA POWERRR. When the show kicks off, we'll be doing recaps. We'll be talking about the shows. We'll be breaking it down, giving you guys our insight information and all that fun stuff. And we'll always try to get you up to date and up to speed for the next episode. That's part of what this whole pre-party was supposed to be about. But to talk about that roster expansion, I mean, so they've announced officially to go along with our world's heavyweight champion, Nick Aldis, Thunder Rosa, the tag team champions JR Kratos and Aaron Stevens, the national champion Trevor Murdoch, the television champion Elijah Burke, Thomas Latimer and Kamile, Tim Storm. On top of those names today, or actually last week, they announced Slice Boogie. Slice Boogie's a standout here in Southern California. He was a 2019 Rookie of the Year award winner from SoCal Uncensored. And, most of his experience has been out here in Southern California. He's been a product of the Santino Brothers Wrestling Academy. That's the same school that has brought you talents like Heather Monroe, Douglas James, Jake Atlas in the NXT, Tyler Bateman and Brody King in Ring of Honor, Raven, did I say Raven? Ruby Reyes is what I meant to say. Raven. Ruby Reyes. And the rosters continue, the Santino Brothers is continuing to put out really good talent. Slice Boogie is an example of one of them. And again, he'll be joining the group of wrestlers we already previously mentioned. Something I want to point out is, a talent like Ricky Starks, who, most of us all love and respect Ricky Starks for what he did while he was a part of the NWA roster. A lot of us respect what he was able to accomplish in the NWA roster before going to AEW. I think this is the same opportunity that can happen for Slice Boogie. He's a guy who's relatively unknown. He's known in the area, but let's be honest, outside of Southern California, outside of the United Wrestling Network, he's unknown. And this is going to be an opportunity for him to showcase what he can do. And, he had a really fantastic match with Davey Boy Smith Jr. on the last episode of Primetime Live. He had a phenomenal match with Karl Fredericks on Primetime Live. And he is in a situation where perhaps maybe this opportunity will help him grow. And again, like Ricky Starks, Royce Isaacs, these guys weren't well known before joining the NWA, and hopefully we're gonna see some growth and some development from them again. The next wrestler, and I'm gonna get to your guys' comments in just a minute, but the next wrestler was announced today was Crimson. Now, of course, that isn't a big surprise. Honestly, it's a foregone conclusion. Crimson was not a part of the initial run of the Power tapings because he was still rehabilitating from an injury. However, Crimson is a guy who, I mean, he's been in Impact. He's challenged for the NWA World's Heavyweight Championship in the past. And let's be honest, he's friends with Nick Aldis. So it's kind of a foregone conclusion that somebody of his stature would fit right in with what they're doing in the NWA. A guy who did have some television time with Impact, does have a good look, can cut a promo. I mean, that kind of checks all the boxes for the NWA, but more so, again, he's buddies with Nick Aldis. He and Jax Dane were really the odds-on favorite to win the Crockett Cup, and it was kind of surprising when it went the opposite direction with the tag team of Brody King and PCO, the Villains Enterprise from Ring of Honor. That I really felt like the Crockett Cup 2019 was all set up to set the War Kings as the future dominant tag team champions of the NWA. And, you know, the fact that Jax Dane has been retweeting and the fact that he's been sharing the NWA content leads this broadcaster, this journalist, to think that perhaps Jax Dane will be making his return to the NWA. And when you start thinking about the War Kings, Jax Dane and Crimson, and how dominant they were in a wrestling program that's going to need tag teams. In fact, they don't have a single tag team right now outside of Kratos and Aaron Stevens. One could suffice, one could believe, one could forecast that perhaps the War Kings will in fact become a tag team, or return as a tag team, and go after those tag team titles. What do you guys think? Sorry, I needed a drink. I got really thirsty there for a second. I'm looking at your comments. Yes, please don't forget to subscribe either on YouTube or Twitch or both. If you really like this content, make sure you share it. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. I appreciate it. And as this community grows, you know, we're here all to talk about wrestling. We're here to talk about the NWA. This is a very niche podcast, a niche stream. We're here to talk about pro wrestling, the pro wrestling we like. And if you guys enjoy it, help us get a larger audience. I definitely would appreciate that. Like I said, Wrestling with MMA is in the house. DCam says, well, they only had 3 people. Yes, DK, we know that the roster was really only 2 people. You say 3, I think it was only 2, because let's be honest, Thunder Rosa and Aldis were the only 2 that we officially knew that were under contract. And then when you start adding in the other champions, I mean, that gives you about 6 people total. And let's not forget, guys, we don't know if our World Women's Champion is going to be even healthy enough to be at back for the attack. That name is very hard for me to say. Does anyone else have that problem? I mean, Back in Black was right there. They decided not to go for that. Back for the attack. We don't know if Serena Deeb will be healthy enough. She just recently had a knee surgery. They call it a scope, and I'm not super familiar with the medical terminology, but essentially they go in to see if there's any serious damage to the knee, like a torn meniscus or a ruptured patella or anything else that could happen with that knee area. So she's going to be out for at least 3 to 6 weeks minimum. Now, if it's 3 weeks and she's healed miraculously, she should be. I mean, if she literally only 3 weeks, she might be ready to go. And that would be great. That'd be phenomenal. But what if she isn't? You know, they're not just shooting the pay-per-view on that Sunday. They're recording for a couple of months worth of content that they'll be releasing. So that means that if Serena Deeb does not compete on those scheduled television tapings, then she won't be seen on NWA programming for like a month, maybe longer. Now, I know she was scheduled to compete in April for Alaska Pro Wrestling. In fact, she was supposed to be taking on Freya the Slaya, who we saw on Circled Squared, somewhat of an NWA alumnus. It'll be interesting to see how that pans out. If she's able to compete out there in April, will the title be on the line? Will she still be champion? Will the NWA strip her of the title if she's unable to compete? There's a lot of questions that we won't have answers to until those tapings actually take place. DCAM does not like the name Slice Boogie, and I'll be honest, neither do I. I don't like it. I don't like the gear either. I know Gary Horn is a big Braves fan and can't stand the Mets gear. But it's not for me to decide what he wears to the ring, and it certainly isn't up to me to pick his name. I think they should have worked on that one a little bit. Wrestling with MMA says he likes Slice Boogie and he's stoked that the NWA got him. I hope that means we get to see the rest of the bodega. We'll talk about the bodega here in just a minute. Wrestling with MMA. We'll talk about that very, very shortly. Matt Vermillion says the show originating from Georgia Public Broadcasting again. Yes. As far as I know, it won't be the same studio, but they will still be at the Georgia Public Broadcasting area. I mean, they don't exactly need the same studio because it's not going to have an audience, which means they don't need to have that much space. So if they can save on some of the real estate, some of the costs of producing the show by doing it in a smaller building, that makes a lot of sense. But we'll see. I don't know for sure. I didn't get a grand tour of the Georgia Public Broadcasting Studios, but from what I heard, they aren't going to be able to film in the bigger studio that they did for their first couple episodes of Power. Lamb says he thinks he'll see a big development in Slice Boogie. I mean, look, what we know about Slice Boogie is he is still very, I don't even want to say green. He's still new to the business. I mean, his rookie year was 2019. So we're talking about a guy that's been in the business for about 2 to 3 years. And maybe with training, maybe another 2 years, maybe another year. But, the fact that he is partnered with Danny Limelight and Papo Esco in Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, I think it helps grow him as a performer. Danny Limelight right now might be one of the best wrestlers on the planet. And the fact that he and Papo, who are both really solid at promos, are working with Slice Boogie, I think you're going to see some growth there. But then there's a lot of room for potential growth when he's going to be on his own. Well, as far as we know, nothing's been announced yet. DCAM is very excited that the War Kings are being back, and again. We're talking about a former NWA World Heavyweight Champion in Jack Dane. Let's not forget everything else. That man held the tag team titles with Rob Conway in New Japan Pro Wrestling. He was a part of high-profile feuds and matches in New Japan. That's huge. That's huge. His feud with Tim Storm is one of the storylines that carried over from the previous ownership until the new ownership, and I think it's great that Jax and Crimson are still around. We could see Jax Dane become a 2-time NWA World Tag Team Champion. Again, he held it with Rob Conway. Remember too, he was part of those feuds with Kojima and Tenzin. In fact, he took the NWA World title off of Hiroshi Tenzin in Las Vegas, Nevada, to become NWA World Heavyweight Champion. And that's a title that, although he did lose to Tim Storm, he never got a rematch for. And so, I guess what I'm saying is, if War Kings are a tag team, phenomenal. That's great. If not, I hope to heck, that he's going after his old 10 pounds of gold. Remember, Tim Storm lost the belt, but he never got that rematch. Jack Dane never got a rematch. So more of your comments. Craig is in the house. Stan469 is in the house. We got a full house tonight. DKM said, I'm the only one that can't pronounce Back on the Attack. Thanks. Matt Vermillion says, I think that's a Dokken album title. Yeah, you're right. It is. And I know I'm the only one that has problems with it. Fine. Serena's last match was against Rio. Yeah, Serena's last match was against Rio before taking the orthoscopic knee. And again, if her knee was clean, if it only needed a little bit of cleaning out, she might be ready to go. But if there was anything at all that needs time to heal, it's easily going to be 6 to 8 weeks and not just the 3 weeks. So we'll see if she's ready to go. But, we're knocking on wood here. We're knocking on wood that she's going to be ready to go, because Thunder Rosa is going to be ready to go. Kamile is going to be ready to go. Who else might be ready to go? Craig, yes, I am doing well. Thank you very much. Wrestling with MMA remembers Freya. Yeah, she was pretty. I liked Freya. I liked Freya a lot. I think she would fit in if they decided to keep using her. Craig says that Aaron Stevens sees a lot of potential in Slice Boogie. And Aaron Stevens is literally, his eyes are on that United Wrestling Network talent. He's a writer for the show. He's a promoter. So, for Stan says, for 28 years I've been bugging PWI to recognize the NWA as a status world title. With that said, I think it's a mistake for the NWA to make NWA Power a pay-per-view show just days after PWI announced that they'll recognize the NWA's world title again. Yeah, Stan, so there's a lot of schematics here to talk about with regards to the NWA going to Fight TV and being a subscription service television show. The meat and potatoes of it is YouTube was a great opportunity. YouTube offered so much reach for the NWA that at the end of the day, the compensation that they were getting for their content was minimal. We discussed here last week on the show, and I've also done this on the audio podcast, that at most they were making about $800 an episode. And that's from an industry insider. That is not from an NWA source, but from somebody I know personally who deals with YouTube wrestling related content. Those numbers are probably around $800, and that number is low when you're talking about the production costs to doing the show, for doing Power, are upwards of $10,000, maybe more. So you have to be able to offset those costs. If they can't do live shows, they can't do live events, and they can only do these empty arena shows, they have to be able to offset their costs. So charging the $4.99 a month, I know it's a little bit, for a lot of people that's going to be difficult. I know it's going to be kind of hard to take care of that when the price, with the way the economy is and the way that, the job market is right now. But $4.99, I mean, that's really their only option to make the content low cost. They can't do just YouTube. With that being said, I hope that this isn't the end of them producing content for YouTube. I still think there's a way to capitalize on that 212,000 subscribers that they have on YouTube by making either delayed content or maybe only a match or 2 matches, and kind of allowing stuff to go to YouTube organically after it's already been premiered on NWA Power on Fight TV. We'll see how it goes, but the fact of the matter is they signed what is being reported as a multi-million-dollar deal, which, I mean, again, if you're making $800 an episode, or you have this multi-million-dollar deal, the multi-million-dollar deal, number one, is going to put money in Billy's pockets, and two, it's going to allow the company to continue to grow and lock up more contracts and actually be more competitive with these contracts, as opposed to some of the contracts we heard about last fall. Stan also says, I don't think that the NWA owes anybody free content, as my DVD set of season 2 of NWA Power just arrived yesterday, but free views is the way to get the viewers and new fans. And again, totally agree. I still think they should use YouTube. There's still a market out there. Let's face it, there is a market for the NWA that will buy every pay-per-view, will buy every merchandise, will buy every shirt, buy every hat, buy every DVD, and then there's a segment of that market that isn't going to spend their money on anything. Now, those people who aren't going to spend money on the product, I mean, maybe you can't even really qualify them as customers, but by watching your content, they're still generating eyeballs, attention, revenues, higher views for your YouTube channel. So if there's a way that they can create a separate video, maybe clipped matches, or maybe one live match with some additional NWA content, you could still benefit from that 212,000 people who were watching your product every week a year ago. DKM says that Jax won the title in San Antonio. You were there. You were correct. I'm not sure where I lost Las Vegas from. I know he won a title in Vegas. Maybe that was Conway winning the title in Vegas from Kojima. Maybe I have maybe I'm confused. Woodland Goblin's in the house. Welcome, Woodland Goblin. Stan says he became a fan of the NWA after watching free television on TBS. And I get that, Stan. I get what you're saying, but you also have to remember that, TBS was paying for that content. They were making money with that content. There was a very little money to be made on YouTube. Thunder Rosa, Ryan Romano's is excited that she'll be there. Traducus says, question, how possible is it for Zicky Dice to return to the NWA? In an interview, it seems that he butted heads with Aldis and Corgan. Might not have liked Zicky request. Look, in the world of professional wrestling, I've learned over the last 30 plus years that anything is possible. But the way that Zicky Dice and the NWA butted heads, I don't think that is possible at this time. I don't think it's going to happen. Now, with that being said, I think it would be great for Zicky Dice to come in because there's so much of that story is known, so much tension, so much you could build with storyline wise. I think that would be great for the NWA. Sean Mega says, do you think Miranda Gordy will join the NWA? Sean, it seems to me that SWE Fury, now although they did work previously with Trevor Murdoch, they were very complimentary of Nick Aldis and the NWA, it seems to me that they have a problem sharing their talent with other promotions. They recently let go of their announcer, Bryce Brudeau, because he started working with United Wrestling Network and their project in Louisiana. So, and again, we just recently learned that Tim Storm left the company. I don't think that Miranda Gordy will join the NWA unless she leaves SWE Fury. And Stan, it's always great to see you, my friend. Thank you for being here. Lamb says Zicky moved to Atlanta, Georgia after his marriage last year. He could show up every time, but there, due to the backstory, it's unlikely in my eyes. Exactly. I don't think Zicky Dice will be in the NWA. But, I mean, look, wrestling is so things change quickly. Things change. So could we see Zicky Dice? I mean, it's possible. Craig says he would like to see episodes of 10 Pounds of Gold return to YouTube. I would too, but the caveat to that is the 10 Pounds of Gold only made sense as a build for pay-per-views. It's usually because it was that big money match, right? It was kind of to emulate the style of storytelling that ESPN would do or HBO would do for their boxing series. And that's really the genesis of the 10 Pounds of Gold. Now, if they have a big title match coming up, let's say Nick Aldis versus Davey Boy Smith Jr. at the next pay-per-view, or somebody of that caliber, then I could, ultimately see that 10 Pounds of Gold being a perfectly executed vehicle for the NWA to garner not only attention for the pay-per-view, but kind of show the stories that they've been telling on Fight TV without actually having to give people that subscription. That they could tell the stories right there with 10 Pounds of Gold, and I hope they do it, but I still think that it would be very smart for the NWA to capitalize again on 212,000 subscribers to offer them some sort of compensation that isn't NWA Power, some sort of content that could drive people to still order the pay-per-views, still order the merchandise, and still benefit off of the 212,000 people watching it. And yeah, so Trideca said the same thing. Sean says people pay for Raw and Dynamite, and that's not free. I mean, yeah, it is and it isn't, right? Because you have to pay for cable or some sort of cable provider. It's not free, and you're absolutely right. And Stan says it's about building fans for when this pandemic is over. They can keep the old material up. People are, yeah, and you're right. You're right, Stan. But I'm going to skip past this because I see there's a lot of comments and we've kind of already addressed it. Willie says, hi, J. Cal, loyal fan of the NWA Pro Wrestling, United Wrestling Network, and Primetime Live. Absolutely, Willie. Welcome to the show. Always glad to have you here. See more of your guys' comments. Matt Vermillion says, anybody know when the contracts are up for Killian Dane and Cassius Ohno in NXT? I believe, okay, so we know that, I'm not sure about Killian Dane. I don't know his contract status. I know that Cassius Ohno was a part of those talents that were released as part of, let's just call it the pandemic pause, when they released all the talent from the WWE. I would imagine that Cassius Ohno would be free and clear to sign now, but I don't really know for sure if that's the case. He is absolutely on one of my top names on my list. In fact, a few weeks ago we talked about that on this podcast, about who we would like to have on the who we'd like to see join the NWA roster, and he was one of the more popular answers. Craig says, also, if Billy Corgan Lightning 1 still has the exclusive license to use the footage from the Houston Wrestling Library, then I'd like to see classic episodes of Houston Wrestling return to YouTube. Craig, that's the thing. That whole library situation was a mess, and I don't think that they ever had exclusive rights to use it. I don't think that former NWA ownership, I'm not going to mention any names, I don't think they had exclusive rights to use it. I still think the property was Valerie Bosch's. I know that she passed away, and that means her son was the sole inheritor of that, and I don't know what the status is. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if the WWE just purchased it outright to do, I think his name is Joey, a favor. But again, I don't know what the status is of that. DKM says, Conway won in Vegas, Dane won the NA title. Okay, thank you DK for clearing that up. With the Goblet, Tim Storm left SWE Fury. There was a dispute over some behind-the-scenes stuff, and now he is free to work anywhere. Putting You Over just shared us on their page. I appreciate that, Putting You Over. Thank you for doing that. I'm just reading your guys' comments. Thank you for, man, I just love all the comments. You guys are awesome, making the show easy. Willie says, do you think United Wrestling Network and Primetime Live would still be affiliated with the NWA? Willie, I'm going to tell you right now, I think that after Primetime Live wrapped up, I think we are done seeing a talent agreement and a talent exchange, if you will, a working relationship with the NWA and the United Wrestling Network. And, you know, I don't want to go into details because I don't really know. It would just be me speculating. But I know that David Marquez has said time and time again that their focus now is going to be pushing their world's heavyweight champion, or the world champion, excuse me, which they said they'll be making that announcement this Friday about when and where that tournament will be held between Michael Bennett and Chris Dickinson. Of course, Michael Bennett did famously challenge Nick Aldis on the first episode of Primetime Live, but I don't believe his connection to the NWA is any further than that. We'll see how that runs out. Matt Vermillion says, what hurts is having so much of the NWA WCW library being held by others. Well, see, the problem is, Matt, is back when a lot of the independent wrestling promotions that were connected to the NWA existed, they didn't keep track of that photo library, the video library. A lot of Jim Crockett Promotions is different. Also, so was Paul Bosch in the Houston library. But for example, out here in Los Angeles, we had NWA Hollywood, which was the LaBelle family produced that show. And, they made the mistakes of literally recording over their originals. So, hours and hours of content from talents coming in from New Japan Pro Wrestling, talents coming from All Japan Pro Wrestling, Freddie Blassie, John Tolos, Rowdy Piper, Chavo Guerrero Sr., in fact, the entire Guerrero family. All of that stuff is lost because they didn't keep track of their libraries. They just recorded over it. And I mean, there is more than just Jim Crockett. Now, WWE owns the Jim Crockett library, which again, that includes NWA Mid-South, that includes Georgia Championship Wrestling and the Mid-Atlantic Wrestling. So there's a lot of that stuff that in Georgia Championship Wrestling, all that stuff. All that stuff got absolved when the WWE bought them out, but there were still libraries from Portland. There were still libraries, even more modern day libraries like Dennis Corluzzo's stuff, the cyberspace stuff, Joe Price's NWA Florida, NWA Dallas, Jim Crockett Jr.'s last wrestling promotion. There was still content out there. Hell, Dave Marquez has been producing NWA affiliated content since 2006. So, I mean, there is NWA content out there. It's just that Billy hasn't shown an interest in acquiring that. They don't really want that footage, and that's okay too. But again, when this pandemic happened, it would have been great if they could have just thrown on the best of NWA World Title matches, showed matches with Severin or matches with Pierce or matches with Steve Corino or Sabu or Mike Rapata or any of that stuff. The fact of the matter is that library, although the Hollywood stuff was really good, there's a lot of that stuff that made it out there that just wasn't very good. And there are no master tapes of that stuff. It's kind of done. Let's see. Sean Mega says he would mark out if Zicky Dice showed up with Tharp as his manager. Sean, that would be phenomenal. You just nailed it. If Zicky Dice showed up on NWA Power with Bruce Tharp as his manager, I would mark the F out. And I don't like Bruce Tharp. I don't. But I think he would be perfect as a manager and perfect as a heel. I always thought that. And I even told them that. I told that to Dave Lagana. I told that to Dave Marquez. And I think there was talks of it at some point, but it just never materialized. No, Dave Marquez is done with the NWA as far as announcing goes. Our good friend Kyle Davis will be taking that role. And Kyle Davis is great. Big fan of Kyle Davis. Good dude. Good broadcaster. And I'm excited to see what he has to offer in that position. Craig says he loves the idea too. Yeah, I mean, that's a great idea. Are you listening? Billy, Nick, Kenny, any of you guys listening? Get Bruce Tharp on the phone. I never thought I'd say that on this show. Let's see. Yeah, Dyson Tharp would be awesome. NWA on fire. Sean, yes, NWA on fire too. Again, that content was out there. That could have been something. Trideca says, could be worse. Could be Fred Kohler Library, which is at the bottom of the Hudson River due to the company that bought the Dumont TV station warehouses, wanted to make space, literally loaded up a whole TV network's worth of footage. That's awful. Trideca, that's terrible. Oh, that breaks my heart. Oh, it hurts so bad. They just dumped it in the river, huh? Yikes. Wrestling with MMA, I do believe that Kyle is great. I think he'll be a really good fit in that position. One of the things that I like about Kyle Davis is not only did he spend a lot of years in the ring wrestling with Ring of Honor, but he understands the business and he's passionate about the NWA. I had a few opportunities to speak to him in Atlanta for the before the first episode of Power, and that guy is just a really good dude. He is, and I think that this opportunity for him, he's going to be authentic. He's going to be himself. He's going to be excited. He isn't David Marquez, and he doesn't have to be. I'm going to miss Dave Marquez there at the broadcast booth because I thought Dave Marquez definitely brought a different look and feel and definitely the old school, old style approach. But that's okay Kyle Davis is a good guy, and I think he's going to do a good job. Yeah, Lamb says, thank God that there is so much content on the WWE library. Imagine, guys, what if there wasn't? And we're talking about an organization that's 72 years old, and you can't even point somebody in the right direction to find the history. That would be more sadder for me than the fact that the WWE owns it, is the fact that no one would be able to see it. Woodland Goblin, I don't know if Sean Mooney is going to be back, but I think he would be... It depends on what story they're trying to tell and how they're trying to push the show. Sean Mooney definitely gives it a throwback. He definitely does. But as a host of the show, I don't think he's the guy you want to use. And it was proven to me that Joe Galley did a phenomenal job doing the Inside the NWA. And it's something I hope they bring back too. I hope and something else they could put on YouTube is Inside the NWA. They could literally record them at the studios. But that would give them an opportunity. I don't know how much Sean Mooney costs to bring in. I don't imagine it's cheap. And if you've got talented guys like Kyle Davis and talented guys like Joe Galley, I don't know that you need him. And that's not to disparage Sean Mooney, because I really thought he brought that classic style voice and presence to the show, but again, I don't know if it's 100% necessary. Willie Bowen says that Doug Williams should challenge Aldis for the World's Heavyweight Championship. I mean, we're still under travel ban restrictions. I don't know that someone from the UK could fly to the United States, even if it was for an NWA World Title defense, but I think so too. I really think that it would be an interesting way to go. Student versus teacher. There was that great mentorship. And again, Doug Williams is freaking great. So we'll see. Tredeca says, yep, so if we really wanted, we could bug Vince to rescue that. There's been restoring and recovering film that has been underwater for like 40 years. I mean, I don't think it's going to happen, but that'd be pretty cool. Sorry, guys, I'm just trying to keep up here. You guys are doing a great job of really kind of directing the show today. Tredeca says, and then there's USWA library, that which no one seems to know who owns that. I mean, you would think that Vince owns it, but then maybe Lawler. That you're right. That one's a cluster as well. Lamb says he thought that Doug challenged for the title 2 or 3 years ago. Actually, Lamb, that was in that pause between Nick's run and Cody's run, where Cody had the title. Nick went back to the UK, but he was no longer world champion, so that match was there was no title on the line. There's no word yet about Nikita if he will be back, but again, if they're still in Atlanta, I would imagine that it would be easy for Nikita to get there, especially if he's introducing the Koloffs. Now again, that hasn't been made official yet, but the Koloffs, who are part of the Circled Squared, again, would make a great addition to a roster that's in desperate need of tag team wrestling. Okay, so yeah, and it is Nikita Koloff's birthday today, as Lamb points out. It's also Melina's birthday, as Lamb pointed out to me earlier on Twitter. But let's take a break from your comments so I could say a few things, because I think this is stuff that we should talk about as well, because I think I have some insider information, and I think I'm going to be able to tell you 2 names who might be joining that roster that might be a part of the NWA that you haven't heard yet. And the first name is, you guessed it, 1/3 of the bodega, Papo Esco. And I heard he's starving for some action. And I heard that he might be joining that NWA roster very, very soon. Now, we know that as the bodega, Danny Limelight and Papo Esco really started to come into their own on Primetime Live and the United Wrestling Network's Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. They won the United Wrestling Network tag team titles. The problem is I don't think you're going to see Danny Limelight appear in the NWA, which means Papo Esco looks like he's going to be a singles competitor in the NWA if this rumor that I heard is true, which that, again, is not necessarily a bad thing, because a couple months ago when we were talking about Trevor Murdoch, and him winning that NWA National Championship was a competitor we thought would make a good fit, would be in a Haas battle, right? In a big Haas fight would be Papo Esco and Trevor Murdoch. Now, it should be known, I believe Will Martin is the one that first said that on the hot tag. I think he's the one that picked it up. Maybe it might have been Dave Scooby. It could have been Dave Scooby. I don't think it was me, but I'm all for it. And in fact, I went to Twitter and messaged both Pablo Esco and Trevor Murdoch, and I tweeted at both of them. And it seemed like that something could have happened, and we might get that match. We might get that showdown at some point, Trevor Murdoch and Pablo Esco. Or if he does come in, maybe they do a Bodega Light without Danny Limelight and put Pablo Esco and Slice Boogie as a tag team. So that's something else that could be in the works. But like I said, he is another name that was rumored to be a part of NWA Power when it returns. The other name that I heard actually had a non-title match that appeared on Shockwave. It was that was the one match that aired on Shockwave that didn't previously air on Primetime Live, and that's against Jordan Clearwater. Jordan Clearwater, again, had that non-title match against Nick Aldis and really impressed a lot of people. He was the United Wrestling Network. He was the Hollywood Heritage Champion for a few months, or for a few weeks, He appears on New Japan Pro Wrestling's New Japan Strong, that's also filmed in Port Hueneme, the same place they filmed Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. He's a student of Karl the Machine Gun Anderson. He's really been getting a lot of people talking. There's a lot of people who are hearing his name, and he could be the next guy that joins the NWA roster if the rumors that I'm hearing are true, and that would make 3 guys from the United Wrestling Network. So when anyone says something about the United Wrestling Network not being a good place, I mean, if 3 of their guys are showing up in the NWA, that means something. Okay, so more of your comments. Tredekus is asking, have they mentioned who's going to be replacing Stu Bennett? No, they haven't mentioned that yet. I wouldn't be against Joe Galley calling the show by himself, but I really think he needs a soundboard, somebody to bounce off of. And, the crazy thing is, and I said this when they replaced Cornette the first time, Raven lives in Atlanta. He lives in Atlanta. Also, Scott Hudson lives in Atlanta. Scott Hudson of WCW fame. Those are 2 guys who I think could fit in perfectly in that role of being a color commentator. Now, Scott Hudson used to be a play-by-play guy, but, it doesn't mean he can't do some color for the show. And of course, Raven he's eloquent. He's well-versed. Not only that, but he's a former NWA World's Heavyweight Champion. And he's wrestled for, WCW, WWE, ECW, the NWA back in Portland, the Jim Crockett Promotions, and of course Impact Wrestling. So he's somebody who I think would add a lot of insight and a lot of creative to the color, as well as between all that, his mind for the business. I mean, he could be somebody that they add on to the creative as well. But we'll see. I mean, again, there's nothing been announced formally yet, and we'll talk about that, I guess, when they get that announcement. Sean Mega says, do you think the NWA will get behind a new young talent, for example, Ren Narita in New Japan Strong? I mean, I think that would be a great move, because again, it's a shame to me that it doesn't seem like United Wrestling Network and the NWA will be working together going forward, because Dave Marquez has ties to New Japan Pro Wrestling. It's his production company that puts together New Japan Strong. And I mean, they've got Ring of Honor guys like Tyler Bateman. They've got Ring of Honor guys like Brody King appearing on the show, as well as a mix between New Japan talent like Jeff Cobb, Fred Rosser, guys from Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. New Japan Strong has become this weird amalgamation of a lot of different wrestling, and it's too bad that universe, that New Japan Strong, couldn't work with what they're doing in the NWA, because I mean, again, I would love to see somebody like Barrett Brown show up in the NWA. He's a former World Junior Heavyweight Champion. He was the last man to hold the title. Of course I would love to see Barrett Brown there, but Carl Fredericks, Clark Connors, and to your point, Narita. I'm sorry if I'm saying it wrong. Again, this is an opportunity to showcase talent who, again, I mean, if as they grow, so does your brand. So it's just a shame that there isn't a stronger connection between the two parties. Where are the Matt Vermillion says, where are the Koloff brothers wrestling now? The Koloff brothers wrestling, I forget Jeff Lewis Neal. I'm so bad with names. I know he was wrestling in the Atlanta area. He was part of NWA Anarchy, and before that, NWA Wildside. I still believe he's wrestling locally in Georgia. His partner, I'm not exactly sure where he's been at, but I think they're both local to that to Atlanta. So to Georgia, excuse me. Aldis wasn't NWA World Heavyweight Champion at the time. He was, yes, okay. Yep, and then Lamb just said what I was thinking about New Japan. Willie Bowen says Watts would be a great addition to NWA Power. Dave Scooby says Trevor and Papa would be great. Dave, I think you're the one that said that, Scooby. I think that was your pick. It was either you or Will, and I know I ran with it, but yes, I would love that. You guys like Jordan Clearwater in the NWA? Again, nothing's been made official. This isn't like I haven't seen it written down somewhere. These are just rumors that I heard from a little birdie, and I don't know if there's any truth to it, but that rumor also told me about Slice Boogie before I read it on Twitter, so we'll see. Matt Vermillion says, is there a Joshi connection to the NWA? Plenty of talent available, but no major U.S. coverage yet. I think if the NWA is going to effort a women's division, they've got Mission Pro Wrestling and Thunder Rosa right there. To me, that would be the obvious choice. But again, connected directly to a Joshi promotion. I know when Thunder Rosa was the Tokyo I think it was Tokyo Joshi promotion. She was champion in that promotion for some time, and there was talk that she would take the NWA Women's title there to defend it. Of course, COVID-19 happened, and that changed everything. Terry McDermott says Joe needs a guy to set him straight like Stu did. Yeah, you might be right. I wouldn't be surprised, again, if they put somebody in that role, but I don't know yet. And then Dave Scooby offers a good suggestion with Nikita doing color commentary. That might work too. And Matt, if you're asking what Nikita is doing, Nikita actually has a Christian outreach ministry, and he speaks for the for that cause, and that's what he does. Just trying to keep up your comments. Sorry guys if I sound like I'm a little out of it. Yes, Ryan Romano, International Princess Championship. She actually gave me crap for not knowing that title when I interviewed her. And yes, Lamb, it was the Tokyo Joshi Pro Wrestling. Geez, it's already been an hour. Are you kidding me? Wow, time flies. You guys, hey, number one, you guys are great. This show was so fun today. I didn't even have time to think because you guys were so active, and I do appreciate that. That's what makes this show so much fun to do, and we're here every Tuesday from 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 o'clock Pacific, and this is going to be your lead-in, guys. If you're watching NWA Power on March 23rd, watch this show first, and it'll lead you right up to it. It's the pre-party. It's the pre-game. That was the entire concept behind the show, is to get you excited and psyched up and have a good time leading up to whatever the NWA was going to offer you, whether it was going to be NWA Power or Shockwave. And I hope we continue this tradition. I hope you guys will be here with me as we do it, because it's so damn fun. To wrap up my final thoughts, of course, everything that we speculated today was just speculation. I don't have facts. I can't reveal my sources, but I do believe that we're going to see Jordan Clearwater join the NWA as well as Pablo Esco. And if that happens, guys, first of all, Jay told you first. Second of all, the NWA is going to grow better even by 2 more. I'm looking forward to more names and more announcements we're going to hear soon. Of course, I don't believe Serena Deeb will be ready and in ring in an in-ring capacity, but hopefully she'll still be a part of the tapings. In that video that they aired, that third, what was it, a 30-second troll job? That video showed a lot of talent who may or may not be involved with the project. I for one, hope that they are. I hope we do see Melina come back to the NWA. I hope we see a lot more talent back here in the NWA. Of course, there's so much more that we still has remained to be seen. But as soon as we find it, as soon as we know it, visit alliance-wrestling.com and you'll see me post about it. And I'll try to give you some backside information, background information, not backside information. That's none of our business. The background information, we'll try to get that for you as well. And of course, we do have an audio podcast that is available on iTunes, Spotify, Amazon, anywhere you get your podcast. Just type in the Alliance Blog Podcast. That's where you can find it. Of course, we've got merchandise. If you guys want to rep the brand, if you want to have your own Alliance Wrestling merchandise, we do have some available. Hit the merch store at alliance-wrestling.com. Buy a shirt, buy a hat, or just keep watching the show. Any way you want to support us, I definitely appreciate it. That's going to do it now for the podcast. Remember, in the infamous words of Bruce Lee, who once said that, oh gosh, now I forgot my quote. Hold on a second. Let me think of it here. Let me think of it. It is, absorb what is useful, reject what is useless, and add what is essential. See, I messed it up. But until next time, we'll see you at the matches. Have a good night now. Goodbye.